Okay, cool. All right, guys. I'm gonna then roll with it. Brad obviously has some technical issues on his side. I'm not sure I can hear him clearly, in fact. So please carry on posting questions as we normally do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through it as if I'm doing a presentation, kind of like we do our presentations for the Comrades Roadshows, I guess. But I will keep Brad in the background. And Brad, because I'm going to have the PowerPoint in front of me, if you could perhaps just wave your hand, or because I can hear you, can actually just talk to me, and then I'll read the question and read it out to the audience, and then I will answer that question. So, yeah, unfortunately, you guys won't see the slides, but that's okay. I will run everybody through them. So if I look down, okay, cool. Okay, excellent. Right, so then let's hit it. Brad will flag me down when there's some cool questions that come through and stop me, and then I'll answer those questions. Otherwise, I'm going to run through it pretty much as a presentation. Can't read anything, so if there are any problems or anything, then shout. Okay, so yeah, just welcome to everybody. Yeah, really sorry about the technical issues, and as always, a massive thank you to Bonitas, because without them, these would not be taking place. So Bonitas do sponsor the webinars, so thanks very much, and also a big sponsor of the Comrades Roadshows, and as well as the Comrades Marathon itself. Right, so we're going to go through kind of where you need to be right now. We're going to look through what you need to be doing for the next 4 weeks. We do need to hang in there for the last, what I call, big push. And then I'm going to go through why we don't want to be doing racing, which I've covered a few times, but I just feel like it's so important, and the closer we get to the race, the more important it becomes that we cover that. And then obviously we're going to spend a lot of time on the long run, because by the time we do the next, we will have just done the long run. So this webinar will essentially take us up to that point. Okay.
Right. Lindsey, I think I might have my mic situation sorted out. Let me hear. Can everybody hear me? Are we sorted? Give us a comment or give us a message if you can hear me. Sorry to jump in like that, but I think I might have it sorted. Let's see if we can hear me. Give us a thumbs up or a comment. Lindsey, won't you ask them if they hear me?
Yeah. So sorry, just one last try there to see if you can hear Brad, because he thinks he's sorted out his issue. If somebody can pop a comment in there just saying no, we can't hear you, or yes, we can hear you.
Haha, I'm back. Woo! There we go. Cool. Which is, you gotta love software, man. When things go according to plan, it's awesome. When they don't, yeah. And let me just I know exactly what's going to happen. So my Mac went in for repairs. It's been in for repairs for the last 2 weeks, and obviously settings have been changed, unfortunately. So, yeah, it is what it is, but I am back. So, Lindsey, sorry to interrupt you with that, but we finally have it, which is wicked. All right, if I could just ask everyone, we've obviously had technical issues this evening with my mic not working, so we've had to change the feed, the URL that we've been working on. So, if I could just ask everyone, please would you mind if you can help us huge here, because we had a lot of people who were on the feed, and because we ended up killing it and trying another one, we've lost a lot of people who would be on this webinar. So if you wouldn't mind, please just sharing this now. If you're in a Comrades group, or if you're in a running group, just share it into the different Facebook groups if you can. We would appreciate that massively, and that'll help sort of get the guys who are sitting on the other link waiting for it to start, and it's not going to start because we're on this link. So please, if you've got any running mates, tag them in the comments below as well. That'll also let them see this. So if you've got a group that normally watches this, please just tag your mates in the comments as well. So Lindsey, yeah, let me just get that housekeeping out the way. And you started mentioning, we were talking about where we should be right now. We're going to look at what we should be focusing on for the next 4 weeks, and also talking about hanging in there, because it's this stage in the training that's really hard, and it's just biting the bullet for a few more weeks, and then it's downhill to Comrades. and then we talk a little bit about the long run, and we're going to have a full Q&A tonight. So we're going to try and get through as many questions as we can this evening. So put those questions in the comments, and we'll get to those tonight as well. So that's what we are going to be running through tonight, and I'm pretty excited. I absolutely love doing these things. Lindsey, let's talk about where we should be right now from a training perspective. Where should all the runners be?
So look, we are in peak Comrades training. So essentially pretty much up until now, I've just been telling people, right, we're kind of holding back, but not really holding back, but we're laying a foundation, and the training is still to come, and be patient. And really now we are there. So, the great saying is, when is it? It's never too late to panic. That's where we are right now. And so really it is about logging those kilometers. It's about being consistent. And maybe the best thing then is to move on to the different medals and what we should be doing in terms of each medal. And of course, I put a little asterisk there that you must always listen to your body. So fatigue is normal, and you should be, if you've been training properly, chances are you are going to be feeling pretty tired. Your legs are going to be starting to feel tired, particularly as we move into late April, and that is normal. But a normal amount of fatigue will mean that as you get started in your training, you'll run, and perhaps after 10, 15 minutes you will actually start to feel quite strong again. If you're feeling absolutely knackered through the entire training session, and especially if you are on a clone or silver, and when you get to those hill work or speed work days, you can't do anything because you're so tired. That's the kind of fatigue where you got to listen to your body, and you got to go off a little bit, and you got to let yourself recover. But the kind of normal fatigue where it's starting to get a little bit difficult to get out of bed in the morning, your legs feel pretty tired when you're going up and down stairs, that's kind of the normal fatigue that you can start to be looking forward to. Okay? And look, I'm going to go in reverse order for a change. I normally go with the slowest to the fastest, but the silver medal guys, we're hitting peak training. So if you're a marginal silver, you're probably running in the region of 120 to 140 Ks a week. If you're going for a sub 7 hour, you're probably hitting more like 140, 150 Ks a week. And as you move through the sixes and closer to the six, you're probably getting closer to 100 and 160 Ks per week. Bill Rowan guys are somewhere between 90 and 110, 120 Ks a week at a push. Then we move into bronze, which are sitting somewhere around the 85. Your more experienced bronze runners might be getting to 100, but as a typical rule, somewhere around 80 to 85 Ks a week. And then your finishers are going to be somewhere between 55 and 80 Ks a week, and that'll depend on the exact week that you're in, the level of experience that you have, but most weeks you'll probably be touching between 60 and 70 Ks. 80 Ks is probably looking at your upper limit. So that kind of gives you a ballpark figure of where you should be right now. Of course, some of you will be following programs, some of you will be following some of my programs, and I have seen a lot of panic on some Facebook groups, and I'm telling you now that although I've given you these numbers, Comrades is not all about the number of kilometers that you run. Yes, we are doing more training than we've ever done before now. Even the people on the low end are doing that, but it's still much more about consistency, training through this without too many injury breaks and without too many illness breaks. And the way we achieve that is by making sure that we do enough and not too much. And that number is going to be slightly different for everybody.
Absolutely. Lindsey, let's talk a little bit about the next 4 weeks. We've obviously spoken about where runners are right now. And you mentioned about the kilometers, and you're so right about people and as much as I love Facebook and we're doing this on Facebook, it is a dangerous place because it's easy to get stuck in that comparison game, particularly now where you're following a program and everyone has doubts. It doesn't matter how good a runner you are. At this stage in your training, you've got those questions in your mind. Have I done enough? Am I doing enough? And then somebody posts a message saying that they're doing a 180 or a 200K week. You don't know what medal they're training for. And all of a sudden you think, oh, I need to be running those sort of mileages. But you are a finisher, following the finisher program. And you mentioned some Ks there. Let's talk about logging the Ks and being consistent, but not losing the plot when you're doing it.
Yeah, so look, I mean, it's a valid point. I've got some reasonably long-term clients that I've been coaching for 3 or 4 years, and some of them have had some really amazing comrades with like 14-minute negative splits in the second half, which, you know, most people blind, you can't do negative splits in comrades, but I have clients who regularly pull it off. And they will still phone me and go, at least they've started, it's changed a little bit. They used to phone me in a panic that they're not doing enough. Now they phone me and say, Lindsey, I just need you to reassure me because I know what I'm doing is right, but I just need you to explain it to me again because everyone around me is doing so much. And of course, I do need to remind them that those people around you are people that you regularly finish ahead of at Comrades. So it's about doing what is right for you. And remember, particularly if you're following a Coach Parry program, and especially if you are following that, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead now in the talk, I think, but remember that 65% of the people who don't finish Comrades, so typically there will be around between 4,000 and 5,000 people who start the race but don't finish the race. And 65% of those start with an injury. Now, how do we know that number? Well, because when people don't finish, we actually occasionally, every couple of years, we get hold of those people who don't finish and we ask them the question, why didn't you finish Comrades, amongst a couple of other questions. And 65% of respondents say they don't finish, they started Comrades with an injury. So, and another interesting stat, sorry, just to combine with that, is that 50% of the people who start in H batch don't finish. So if we combine those two stats, the 50% in H and the 65% who don't finish, what we get is that a huge number of people that are starting at the back of the field are starting with injuries. And the reason they start with injuries is actually very simple. The further back and the slower you are as a runner, the good chance is that you are less biomechanically suited to running. Now that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be running. It doesn't that you can't run. But what it does mean is it means that when we apply an extremely high load, you are more likely to break down than somebody at the front of the race. And therefore, you need to train less than the person who's winning the race. Because one of the greatest chances of success is lining up without an injury. So again, I'll go back to the point that we're looking for consistent training over a long period of time. And now you've hopefully done enough training that to this point you can do your peak training. But if you're a finisher and you're running 60 Ks a week, please don't panic because the other people in your club are running 80, 100, 120 a week.
Yeah, that is such a great point, Lindsey. And we got a question in here, quick from it's from Nathaniel. I'm gonna pop it up because I think it's pertinent to what we're talking about at the moment. And Nathaniel's saying, I'm following the coach's finishers program, but I really following it religiously, and I haven't hit 60 kilometers a week yet per week. And that goes to your point. And I was thinking as you were saying that with my comrades. I've never hit close to 1,000 kilometers from the 1st of January to Comrades race day. And if you work it out, if you divide how many weeks there are from the 1st of January to Comrades, it works out to less than 50 Ks a week that you're averaging. So you will get some weeks where you are fairly high, but don't panic about that now. I think that is a pretty important thing to not worry about. Lindsey, as far as...
And just if I can jump in there quickly with Nathaniel too, is to say that the weeks where you have a marathon, even more than that, but every, call it 4 to 5 weeks, then you should be going over 60 Ks because then you've got a marathon plus a couple of runs in the week. You'll go quite a lot over 60 Ks in your long Comrades training run week. And yeah, I mean, just to reiterate Brad's point, on the finishers program, you'll probably get to around 800, maybe 850 Ks from January to race day. Average is certainly a lot less than 60 Ks a week.
It seems like Atlanta has woken up because Danny Suskin's joined us now. Danny wants to know, does that mean he can now start tapering? The training's done, and Danny, the answer is no. Lindsey says you're not allowed to. I'll answer that one for you.
Tell Danny he's not running a 12-hour Comrades.
No pressure, Danny Suskin. All right, let's talk a little bit about the role of recovery, Lindsey. It's something we've spoken about lots here on various of these seminars. And let's just touch on the role of recovery and how important it is, particularly now.
Yeah, so I mean, this really is a recap because I've hammered this point in 2018. But, you know, we're sitting now on the 16th of April, and around about the 13th of May, perhaps 1 week later to the 20th, actually more the 20th of May, but essentially it's 5 weeks. So a little over 5 weeks from now, we are going to start cutting back. So for a little bit over a month, we've really just got to do all the basics as well as we can. I've hammered on about rest and taking at least one, but for me, the majority of Comrades runners should be on 2 rest days per week. We've gone over the sleep over and over again. And again, just to reiterate that it's not about 9 hours or 10 hours or 11 hours of sleep. What it's about is making sure that A, it's good quality sleep, and B, that it is more than you usually get. So the good quality sleep means getting off Facebook, getting off screens, computers, smartphones, iPads, those sort of things. It's getting off of those for 30 to 40 minutes before you go to sleep. It's about keeping cell phones out of the bedroom. It's about keeping flashing lights, red light, blue light out of the bedroom to make sure that we have good quality sleep. And then it's about getting an extra 30 to 45 minutes of sleep every night or some nights, the nights that you can, so that you do recover better. And then, of course, during this period, you want to eat as well as you can. And it's not about following a specific diet. It's about being intentional about what you're putting in your body. It's about making healthy choices more often than you make poor choices. And it's about eating balanced and making sure that you're eating at the right times. And that's really just to drive home the points on recovery that we have spoken about basically at every roadshow and every webinar so far this year.
Absolutely. Well, just a massive thank you to Bonitas for sponsoring these online seminars as well. They are hugely, hugely appreciated. Lindsey, we're going to be talking about the long run as well. There's quite a few questions coming through about the long run, people sort of their last long one before Comrades and when it should be and that sort of thing. We'll get to those questions in a mo. But a great question in from Gavin. Let me just pop that up on the screen. Gavin basically saying, Coach, please can you advise on how to slow your pace for Comrades? He says he's battling to get comfortable with a slower pace. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, so look, if you really struggle to run slower, then you do have to practice it. I mean, then he's answered the question for himself. He's got to force himself to run slower so that he gets used to it. There is, of course, a slightly different alternative, and that is to walk more often. So you can get your average pace down by ensuring that you slow down through walking more often. So you either teach yourself to run slower or you increase the number of walk breaks that you have. But I think the reality here is that anybody run Comrades before will understand very well that you cannot just keep hammering out. So it doesn't matter how comfortable you feel running at 5 minutes a K. You know, if you are not a 3-hour marathoner, you are not going to, or close to it, you're not going to sustain 5 minutes a K over the duration of Comrades. 5 minutes a K will eventually become 6 minutes a K, will eventually become 7 minutes a K. So you do have to practice it on your long, slow runs so that you do get used to running at that slower pace.
Absolutely. All right. Another great question in Lindsey. This one is from Juan Carlsa. Juan wants to know, and this doesn't just relate to oceans, it can be any long run. I had a mate who ran the marathon in Durban yesterday and really struggled, saying, should I be worried if I had a bad 2 oceans?
No. So, look, obviously it's not ideal, and you do want to try and see why you had a bad run. But the fact that you had a bad run at Oceans doesn't mean you're going to have a bad run at Comrades. And I think that's when I say, no, don't worry. That's really what I mean. But if you went in extremely tired and overtrained, if it was because of the injury or there was something up with the nutrition, really what you do want to do is try and figure out and pinpoint what it was. If it was just a bad day and things have been going really well and you've run a couple of marathons that were quite strong and this was just a bad day, then you write it off to it just being a bad day. But you do want to just fiddle around there a bit and see, okay, how could I improve this? Or how could I improve, or what went wrong? And if it was just a bad day, write it off. We all have bad days occasionally, but it's nice to have an answer and pinpoint it. And of course, if we do figure out why it happened, chances are we will be able to prevent it from happening in the future.
Absolutely. Thanks for that question. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. We'll get to them, as many of them as we can tonight as well. There are quite a few questions, as I mentioned, coming through about the long runs and various clubs putting on long runs and should you run it, should you not. We'll chat about the long run in a mo. But Lindsey, I'm going to throw you a bit of a curveball here. This question from Alan, and I'm not sure if you've seen it with you just getting back from Australia, but it says, Coach, any comments on the published cutoff times for Comrades 2018?
Well, I mean, the only comment I've got is that I did have input into the cutoff times. To be honest, they were, in some instances, more generous than what I've put down there. But some of the cutoffs meant that by the time people got through those things, they would have to be running in 5 minutes okay to finish, which I don't think served anybody a purpose. So the only comment I can really make is that I do think they're quite fair. I think they give the people who have to start at the back plenty of time to catch up that time without having to rush and catch it up all in one go. You can basically take more than 60 kilometers to catch up those 6 to 8 minutes that you lose. So I think from that point of view, Comrades has been really fair. And I guess by that I say I feel like I'm being really fair. But with all things in life, I'm happy to receive criticism for it, but no, I think we've done a pretty good consultative process to get to pretty fair cutoff times.
All right, here we go, Lindsey. Another great question, and we've had a few of these come through along these sort of lines. Last question for this round, and then we'll get on to the long run. And this one is where's it from? I can't find it now. But a couple of people asking, when must the cross training stop? And when must the strength training stop? Does it stop, or do they continue going all the way through?
For me, cross-training and strength training can go pretty much right up to 7 to 10. It's always done strength training, always done cross-training. Then I feel like pretty much that last week you can cut it out. If you took cross-training up and strength training up as part of this specific training for Comrades, then 10 days to be on the safe side. But again, I do feel that basically by that last weekend, if you cut out the cross training and the strength training, it'll be absolutely fine. It'll freshen up really nicely in that week. And there's going to be no carryover from either the strength, no fatigue carryover from the strength training and cross training.
Awesome. Lindsey, let's, you mentioned the recovery. We spoke about that just now, the sleep, the rest and nutrition. So we've covered that already. Let's talk a little bit about racing and why it's important no more racing. Obviously, there's still a few marathons that people can run and ultra marathons before Comrades. Let's talk about this is also something we hammer home every single time we chat about this.
Yeah, so you can qualify up until the 6th of May, which most people read as I can improve my seating up until the 6th of May. And to me, it's such a crazy thought process because this is the time where you're the most tired. Okay, so the chances of you running a really good race when you're this tired aren't great. The second thing is that if you do manage to run a really good marathon or ultra marathon, you're putting yourself at great injury risk because you are pushing yourself on a pretty tired body. And then importantly, what are you doing it for? I mean, that's the question you always have to really ask yourself when you do anything, I guess, is why am I doing this? And in most instances, people are not going to improve their marathon time by 40 minutes. Okay, so you might need 5 to 8 minutes to get into the next seating pen, but then to get 28 minutes to get 2 seating pens forward, I mean, that's really not likely unless your first effort was an absolute outright disaster. But even then, is it really worth the effort? Because what you're really doing is you're going to save yourself 2 minutes on race day. So if you move forward a seating pen, you're essentially going to save 2 minutes on race day. You're going to risk getting injured. You're going to be picking up a respiratory infection because it is much cooler and much drier now. And of course, when you run harder, you breathe a lot harder, which means that you empty your lungs out much more, which therefore means you're getting rid of more moisture, which means you get dry in the lungs, and moisture is our first immune defense system, and that's why we often get sick straight after we've done a major endurance event, is because we have pushed that respiratory system. So we're risking injury, we're risking illness, and therefore we risk that all-important consistency. When you start messing with the consistency, you risk much more than 2 minutes on race day. You risk 20 minutes, 30 minutes not finishing. So working or racing towards getting better seating now is just crazy. It's just not worth any of the downside. And the upside is so small that really I don't understand when people are trying to improve their seating during this time.
Absolutely. All right, Lindsey, let's talk about the long run, and I will get to some specific questions about the long run, but let's talk about the specifics. How long, when, why, and what we should do during it.
Yeah, so let's get on to the how long, because traditionally the long run has become a 60 to 65K in distance. That's sort of the layman's commonly held belief. Now for me, that's actually a little bit fast. So if we unpack where does the long run come from, and the long run really comes from the guys that were training for the race in the late 70s and early to mid 80s, when the race suddenly boomed into popularity. People look at the guys that are good, the people that are running well. And the people that were running well were doing a 60 to 70 kilometer long run 3 to 4 weeks before Comrades race day. So the distance really came from this like hardcore lead, if I can call it that, because in the early 80s, there were like 2,000 people running Comrades, but there were like 1,200 getting silver. So the majority of people who ran Comrades were actually just flipping amazing athletes. And so when people in the mid 80s, when it suddenly went to 6,000, 12,000, by the end of the early 90s, the race was on 13, 14,000. People look back to go, okay, what do we need to do for Comrades? And they were asking this 1,200 hardcore elite that ran silver. So for me, 60 Ks is an enormous hit on a person, in particular if they're a novice, and it's second ultra. For many people, it's the first time they go over the marathon distance. So for me, 50 to 55 is the number. And for me, the long run is much more psychological in benefit than it is physical in benefit. And the idea behind it is to get you running past the marathon, because when you do your first marathon, of course, we've all had these thoughts where we go, whew, 42 Ks, that was extreme. How am I going to do that again? And so by then doing this ultra, or 50 or 55 at a push, what we're doing is we're going beyond that marathon mark. We're doing it quite a bit slower than we did the marathon. We're doing it with quite a bit more walking, But when we get to the 50, 55K mark, we're like, okay, hang on, I'm really tired, but actually I know I can go further than this. And you start to believe a lot more that Comrades is possible. So that's really what one is about. And that's why for me 50 to 55 on the upper end is actually enough. When are we going to do it? So the when for me is quite specific to where you are as a runner, your running experience, coupled with the medal that you are training for. So for me, for novices, people who are running Comrades for the first time, 6 weeks is the right number. 5 weeks is okay, but 6 weeks is better, because 6 weeks really does give us enough time to recover from that 50 to 55K effort. If you're running your third, fourth, fifth Comrades, if you're going for a Bill Rowan or a fast bronze, then 5 weeks is your number. Same thing, it gives you time to recover. The reason why you need a little bit less time to recover is because you do have more experience, because your muscles are better adapted, they handle that load better, and therefore you will recover faster. And then we get to those that are at the sharp end of the field or have run maybe 7, 8, 9 Comrades, but still even in that category, the silver medalists and faster are doing their last long run around 4 weeks before, and that category can do 60 Ks. I'm still not sure. Well, actually, I am sure. My worst Comrades have come off my 60K long runs, and my best Comrades have come off a 50K long run. So I still feel like, for me personally, the 60 is still too long. But for the silver medal crowd, and certainly those that are going 6,500 faster, typically they would do 60 to even 65 kilometers. So we've covered the how long, the when, the why, but the last thing to really cover is that it is a training run that is there to really put your Comrades race plan into action. Now, for almost all the medals, you will run slower on Comrades race day than you do for your typical training run. So bear that in mind when you are doing this long run. And this long run is a great time for you to practice Comrades race pace, because it will be slower than your normal everyday runs. And by doing that, you'll also recover much faster afterwards. So we're practicing nutrition, we're practicing run-walk strategy, we're practicing running pace. Those are the key aspects, so that when you get to the end of that 50 to 55 Ks, as I said near the beginning of the slide, you are tired, uncomfortable, but you can feel you can still run a whole lot further.
Absolutely. Just once again, a massive thank you to our sponsor of this webinar. It is Bonitas. If it's not Bonitas, it's not medical aid. Lindsey, you were talking about those long runs, and I've been monitoring the comments. Please keep the questions coming. Pop them into the comments if you've got any questions. We want to get through as many as we can tonight. So a couple of people, as you were saying, 50 to 55K is no longer. A couple of people asking, our club's doing a 60K this weekend, is that too long? Someone else saying, our club's doing a 65, I'm a novice, is that too long? Lindsey, your thoughts? I know you've just said 50 to 55. I don't know if you want to, if there's another way to say 50 to 55, but that's...
Yeah. So look, in the past, and in fact my best Comrades to date, I did 45Ks of the RAC club run, and I went on to Google Maps, worked out where 45Ks was, told my wife what time to come and fetch me there, and I climbed in it. So really, psychologically, it may really be good for you to do 60 to 64. My worst Comrades, my 10.5 hour Comrades came off a 64K Comrades long run. So that I can unequivocally advise against going past 60. I think 60 Ks is a push for all but the top 2% of the field. I think everyone else should be running between 50 and 55 Ks.
Which flows into our next question. Lindsey, again, it's about the long run. It's from Theo. Theo saying, is the 50 kilometer at Loskop okay? I think that's a double thumbs up.
Yes, it is. Look, the Loscorp, that's the 21st. I think is that this weekend? That's this weekend.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit of a long way out. So if you look again, you're not going to be able to do another 50 after that. So what I would then advise that you do, and I just want to consult my calendar so that I get the answer.
Well, Lindsey, while you're looking at the calendar, we've got another question in from Yaku, who's asking exactly where you're going. And Yaku's basically saying, if I did Loscorp this weekend, is it necessary for another 40 kilometer or more long run, or is it sufficient to do the mileage with approximately 30 kilometers run every weekend before we start tapering? And Yaku is aiming for a bronze medal.
Yeah, so if we're doing the 50K, then on the weekend of the 12th and 13th, I would run another at least 36K, but I would actually do another 42. Very easy 42 on the 12th, 13th, which is 3 weeks after Loscorp. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so the weekend of the 12th, 13th, after doing Loscorp, I would do another 40K that weekend, and then you've got 4 weeks to race day, and you are not quite into your taper, but you certainly will be cutting that the long run on the weekend down significantly from there.
All right, cool. Great question in here from Carly Sunshine. I love the name. Saying, would you advise running another ultra if you ran 2 oceans, or would a marathon be better?
So a marathon would suffice, but I think another 50K would be better. So again, if we just get, make sure we get the weekends right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so the weekend of the 5th and 6th of May would actually be perfect for you to do another 50K.
All right. Here's another great question while we are on these sort of long runs. This one coming from Skulk. Lindsey, Skulk Fasaki saying, I've done 232 kilometers, 142 and 2 ultras, and planning one more 42/long run. Is it enough? And when should the latest long run be, the one closest to Comrades?
Yeah, so that is plenty. And with you having done 2 ultras, you're probably better off erring on the 42 without me knowing details about your training. But depending exactly which ultras those were, you probably could go for another 50, but somewhere between 42 and 50, and you want to do that 5 weeks out. So that is the weekend of the 5th and 6th of May.
All right, cool. Keep the questions coming, please. I love when these things are really interactive. Pop them into the comments below. If you haven't shared this feed as well, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to tag mates of yours that are running Comrades that you think would get anything out of this, please feel free to do that as well, and share it into your running groups, whether it's on WhatsApp or on Facebook too. And question in, Lindsey, this one from one of our internationals. It is all the way from Ireland. Eamon wants to know, as an international runner, 19-hour flight arriving from Ireland 5 days before Comrades, should longer rest before flying be considered?
No, so in actual fact, quite the opposite. You don't. So here's your balancing act, okay? When you start to taper, you also start to tighten up, which is why when we taper, we still encourage people to exercise on the same days and do similar exercise to what we have been doing, just at a lower volume, because we want to maintain that movement so that our muscles don't start seizing up and our mobility starts to seize up, because that's going to happen when you fly anyway. So 5 days out is actually quite a nice time. Because then you can get the side, you can go for a couple of walks and some easy jogs, do a little bit of stretching and some mobility stuff, so that come race day you are quite, or you've got a similar range of motion to what you had. So you don't want to be doing resting, okay? But the other side of it is you don't want to train too hard as you go into jumping on an aeroplane, because if you train hard, that suppresses the immune system slightly, and you climb onto an airplane that's full of germs. So in the 2 or 3 days leading up to your flight, you want to train, but certainly the day before and the day of, you don't want to do any high intensity training. So you can still go out and go for a nice, gentle, short run somewhere in the range of 45 minutes to an hour, but you don't want to do big sessions like a long training run of 2 hours plus, or a high intensity session, or a race, something like that. Then jumping onto an airplane puts you at risk of getting sick.
Cool, Eamon, thank you very much for that question. This is such a great question, Lindsey. It's from Matthew Delport. Matthew's saying, is it true that you can overhydrate on the day of Comrades? And what do you think of goos on race day?
Yeah, so you absolutely can overhydrate. It's a little easier than you may suspect. So remember that at Comrades, we go at a relatively low intensity, but for a very long period of time. And so because we're going at that lower intensity, we often don't have the same sweat rates as we when we run at a higher intensity. So although it's going to be hot and humid in Durban, and yes, there are some pretty hard climbs, for the majority of the run, we run at a much lower intensity. So we don't sweat as much, but we often still do sweat out a fair amount of electrolytes, a little bit less fluid, more electrolytes, and then you drink water. And effectively, overhydration is diluting your internal system. So in other words, you run out of salt, and things in our body always work from things shift from a high concentration to low concentration. So if you've diluted all the salt, then things can't move around inside the body anymore, and that's when we run into trouble. So you absolutely can overhydrate, and the best way to avoid overhydrating is to drink to thirst. Okay, so you will probably drink, most people will drink somewhere in the region of 300 to 400 mils an hour, just to get in the energy that we need for the day. And you can increase that slightly or decrease that slightly depending on thirst. And if you do that, then you will probably avoid getting anywhere near hyponatremia or overhydration. And look, gels, goo is as good a product as any other. I always tell people to practice what you're going to be using. So if you like the flavors and you like the texture of goo, then great, go for it. Just make sure that it is something that you have tried and tested. But there's a whole horde of gels on the market. They all have their own flavors. They all have their own texture. Some are thinner than others. Some feel a little bit thicker and more substantial. And the best one is the one that you can eat for a long period of time. That is the best one, because they all have between 23 and 26 grams. Most of them have got caffeine options. Most of them have got some electrolytes options. So just about all the brands have got the basics covered. It just comes down to taste and texture.
Some of them have even got chili in, Coach Parry, don't they? We discovered that at Two Oceans last year, which is fantastic. All right, question in from, let me pop it up onto the screen quick. It's from Saul. And just to give you a bit of backstory here, Lindsey, Saul's asking, is the Cradle 32 on Friday, the Robo 42 on Sunday, and then another marathon on Tuesday too much for a novice in the space of 5 days? Saul's quite a big guy like me. Is that too much running?
Yeah, so that is a lot of running. I would say that I quite like the combination of the Cradle run and then one of the other two. I mean, that is a very big weekend of running. But it's spread out okay. So for me, the ideal one is the 32 and the 1st of May. And that, I think, is a really big week training that'll give you an enormous boost, but it's got enough time in there. And of course, after the marathon, you also need to give yourself 2 to 3 days of very little running, maybe a bit of swimming or cycling, just to let you recover. 32 and Sunday is doable, but again, I would then give myself 3 days off running afterwards to recover. But all three for a novice is a lot. it's a hell of a. So I would steer away from that.
Yeah, Lindsey, if I can also just throw my 2 cents in there as well for Saul, as a big guy myself, and in my experience, in my first one, I tried to do as much as I could in the build-up and went in slightly injured. And in years after that, erred on the conservative side, probably went in slightly underdone, but was fit and strong and had great comrades after that. So I don't know if you would agree with that. Rather than doing too much and risking injury at this stage in the game, then maybe just hang back slightly and make sure you're in one piece come Comrades race day.
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to one of the first points I made today. 65% of the people who don't finish Comrades start with an injury. So you do want to make sure that you avoid getting injured at all costs.
Lindsey, this is a great question because this is one of the races that I used to love running as well. And obviously with Comrades now shifting to the middle of June, it's from Nkululeko. And Nkululeko wants to know, is the 1st of May, obviously that's the Wally Hayward, is that, as your last long run, a 42K, is that too far out from race day?
Yeah, so look, I must say that that's one of the things that I quite like about the new date on the 10th of June is that so many people used to do that long 50 to 60K training run, and then a week later, or not a little bit more than a week later, would get Wally Hayward as their very last one. And I used to feel that combination was quite extreme. So I would say that Wally Hayward as just a 42 is now a little bit too far away to do as your last long run, but if you just add 8Ks, when you get there in the morning, you run 8Ks, and then go and line up and run your 42, then the timing is quite good. I mean, then the fifth, sixth is 5 weeks. So on Tuesday, it's kind of halfway between 5 and 6 weeks, and for me, that's a pretty good compromise, whether you're a novice or a more experienced runner. I think the date can work quite well. But I would turn it into a 50 rather than a 42.
All right. Keep those questions coming. Pop them into the comments below. Lindsey, I'm going to get this question answered because we do have a podcast coming up with this in the next week or so, and we're going to ask it now anyway because you're on the webinar. Flu shots, your thoughts?
Okay, so yes, cool question. And it was actually the timing of these questions is sometimes quite fortuitous. It hasn't even been 10 days since I had a discussion about this with a doctor. And I think the flu shot needs to be seen as a program of improving your immune system rather than a once-off protection for the flu for this year. So the way that immunization works is that you get small dose of an illness, and yes, it does protect you against that particular strain of flu, but also done as a program of vaccination over a couple of years. Overall, the aim there is to improve your immune system. So I think it is a good idea if you are somebody that does get sick fairly often, or if you have children in the house which when they get sick, you get sick, then I think it's something that you should consider. I wouldn't consider it too close to race day, only because some people do experience a very mild form of whatever strain of flu, I guess, that they're getting, but that not everybody suffers from that. And of course, the other good reason why immunization is quite a flu shot is quite a good idea is that if you do in fact still get sick, because that does happen, and then people go, oh well, what was the point? But the symptoms are less severe and you get better much quicker. So that's kind of the type of thing that I would do on a rest day, just because if you are one of those people who's going to feel a little bit iffy for a day or two, then it's okay because you were going to miss that day of running anyway. And if you miss a second day, that's really okay. And then by the third day, you're feeling normal and off you go.
Brilliant stuff. One thing I love about these online seminars, Lindsey, I know you do too, is just where everyone joins us from. And I got a message in from Jim, who's training on his own in Scotland, saying he's really motivated. Jim, thanks for joining us tonight. and got a question in from Benjamin as well, from New York City. Let us know where you're listening from. I want to see, and it doesn't matter if you're in South Africa as well. Pop the city and the province or the state or the country you're listening to us and joining us from tonight. Pop those in the comments. We love sort of seeing where everyone is from around the world. This question from Benjamin saying, Coach, I'll be flying from Brooklyn in New York, landing in Durban 2 days before Comrades. Do you have a recommendation of how to handle the flight and 24 hours of travel?
Business class. Look. So Benjamin, in a more serious answer, when we work with elite sportsmen, we always work under the assumption that we are either going to arrive quite close to the event, or we need to arrive well before the event 5 days or more. And the reason for that is quite simple. Is if you're coming in at around 2 days, typically you will be quite almost shell-shocked, if you like, and your body seems to be fine and operates quite well on adrenaline, and it will get you through the first about the first 3 days. And then typically around day 4 and 5 is where we really start to feel horrible. So you either want to come in well before or you arrive. Like the day before is really pushing it, because again you also have this 24-hour trip, and as I mentioned earlier with the guy coming from Ireland, is that being cramped up in that confined space, it really can just cause all the muscles and joints and everything to stiffen up. So the day before makes that really difficult. But if you're arriving 2 days before, the sun will be shining, so get into the sun, because the sun helps you to reset your I can't remember what they're called, your biorhythms, so that it helps you to flick over the time zones much quicker. Get yourself doing a bit of light exercise that day that you arrive, so that you can just get those muscles and everything loose and limber again, and then do a nice gentle stretch so that everything does feel nice and loose and good for race day.
Awesome stuff. Thanks for that question, Benjamin. Got a message in from Hein Maynard, who's in Saskatchewan in Canada. Novice gearing up for his first experience. Hein Maynard, that's not a very Canadian name, but we'll take it. I guess he's an expat. It looks like half of East London on here tonight as well, Lindsey, which is pretty cool. I'm glad that the infrastructure is holding up in slummies. Couple of questions with regards to injuries, Lindsey. Someone's saying that they've lost 2 weeks of training. They're a bit nervous. Let me just find the question so I can pop it up. Let me find it here quick. Saying they've lost 2 weeks. There we go. It's from Matsudiso. Matsudiso saying, I've lost 2 weeks of training due to injury. Will this hamper my Comrades preparation? And then we also got one in from Boris. Boris saying, I got a fractured rib after tumbling down 2 weeks ago. Had to slow down with running. Still hoping to do whatever I can. Am I a bit crazy? There's lots of people struggling with injuries. We mentioned that 65% stat earlier on in the webinar. Advice if you are injured at the moment, if you have a bit of a niggle, Lindsey?
Yeah, so if you do have an injury at the moment, you're far better off missing a little bit of training and getting injury free. Okay, so if you've missed 2 weeks of training now, we've got 7 weeks to race day, of which 5 of those are good training weeks. So you'll catch up those 2 weeks, no problem. So absolutely no need to panic. But really crucial that you line up injury free. Okay, so if you do have injuries now, get them treated. Don't just wait for them to heal, hope they'll heal. Actually physically do something about it. Go and see a physiotherapist, get them sorted out. Okay, Boris with the cracked ribs. Look, the ribs will heal slower if you are running a lot, because when you're moving that rib, but they will heal. I don't look, and it's very self-limiting. So you'd really have to ignore the pain to go and do any further damage to those ribs. So you can train quite well with those ribs, and you need to just back off when the breathing's getting too deep and the ribs get too sore. You just need to slow down. And those ribs, there's enough time between now and Comrades that those ribs will heal up sufficiently for Comrades race day.
I'm sure someone like Boris could also spend some time on an indoor trainer bicycle just to keep his fitness up, his cardiovascular fitness. Lindsey, that should help a bit as well, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and in fact, it goes for anybody with an injury. Often things like the elliptical, cycling, swimming, these are things that don't hurt whatever injury that we do have, and that means that we then lose even less training time, because although none of those things are happening, if you do that for 2 weeks and then can get back on the road, obviously it's going to minimize any loss of fitness.
Absolutely. We are running slightly later than we normally do. If you've just joined us, we did have one or two little technical glitches at the start, and we don't want to shortchange you. So sorry to keep you up late if you have an early morning run, but we are going to take a few more questions, so keep them coming through. Lindsey, I hope that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, question in from Bridget. Any tips on having to use the portaloos during the race?
Very quick. So look, I often give talks where I say and I don't want to steal the thunder from our very last webinar, but on race day you want to stop as little as possible. Fortunately, there are a large number of portaloos all the way along. So every 3 kilometers there will be portaloos. They generally are quite well stocked with toilet paper, so you don't have to worry too much, although I would carry a little bit with you just in case. But yeah, I mean, if nature calls, nature calls. So I certainly wouldn't try too hard to keep anything in, and particularly not if you need to hit number 2. You don't really want to be doing that on the move. But yeah, I mean, every 3Ks you'll have a stop, and you're not in there to read the newspaper, so get in, get it done, and get out.
Cool stuff. Keep those questions coming through. Pop them in the comments. If you have got any questions, you can get them in right now. Lindsey, a question in. Let me find it quick. It was from, I saw it a second ago. We will find it in a sec. All right, while I'm looking for that question, let me just get through some housekeeping quickly before we do wrap things up. I know it is getting late, so just wanted to let people know that if you are looking for some one-on-one coaching, what you can do is head over to coachparry.com/training. That's where you can get all the details about the one-on-one coaching that we've got on offer. You can also get yourself a training program across the board. So, and it could also be for a spouse or for a partner if they want to get running. There's 10, 21, 42 and Comrades programs that are available. And then don't forget our podcasts as well. We're going to be ramping those up between now and race day as well. So they're going to be coming out once every 3 days, which is good news. So that's all coming up. And if you've got any questions that we missed tonight, we'll definitely be answering those on the podcast as well. So you can get all those details on the website. It is coachparry.com. That's where you can get all that info. Lindsey, great question in here. It actually came through early, and it's from Karen. Karen wants to know, is it too late to start strength training? I've been struggling to find the time, but now I'm worried that I haven't done any.
No, so it's not too late. Obviously, you are now in the throes of the hardest training that you've done, and throwing strength training in there will upset the balance of your training week. So you have to be a little bit careful when you add it in, and you don't want to. And this is quite common, and I've had a few people that have started strength training for various reasons, and then they are just so stiff they can hardly walk. So you want to be sensible about it, but it's absolutely not too late to start doing it. And if you've got time for 2 sessions per week of strength training, that's great. It will really help you going down Botha's Hill, Fields Hill, and through Westville in particular, having nice strong quads and glutes. So you can start doing that now, but just like we started the training process right at the beginning, start out with lighter weights and gradually work your way up until 10 days before the race, and then you cut it out. So you basically got 5.5 good weeks of strength training left.
All right, cool. Got a question from Durkee. Durkee wants to know what your opinion on carbo loading is, and if yes, megaloads off the market, what other products can you suggest?
So look, I've never been a big fan of carbo loading, and the main reason is that quite simply because we are eating too much in that last week anyway. So as your training reaches its absolute peak around 13th of May, 20th of May, kind of that area there, hunger will be driving your eating habits, and you will go onto the seafood diet, which is to say that when you see it, you'll eat it. So you should feed your kids after you've eaten. But more seriously though, your appetite really increases all the way through. And when we start to cut back our training in those last 3 weeks, and especially in those last 10 days when we really cut back the training, we don't eat less. We just carry on eating what we're eating. So I feel that we're doing carbo loading anyway when we do that. And the other reason why I'm not a big fan of carbo loading is because just like we've been training on the road all these months, we've also been training our bodies to absorb certain types of foods, because humans are kind of creatures of habit, so we tend to eat the same things. And so through this whole training process, you've been eating certain types of foods, and then all of a sudden in the last 3 days, you're going to start eating very rich pasta meals, and in your case, even worse, you're going to go from a solid food diet to a mega load energy at very high sugar concentration, which can also just end up irritating the gut. So I've never been a big fan of it. Of course, there are people who swear by it, and if it's something you've tried before your other races and it has worked for you and you feel like it really works, then carry on doing it. But as a general rule for me and the people that I work with, I steer away from it.
Cool stuff. Lindsey, question in from Fahima, and this is such a great question because, and also I'm going to ask this, if you have, pop it into the comments. I want to know about it. Have the Comrades dream started yet? Have you started dreaming about things going wrong on Comrades race day? Or let us know. I've had one where I've dreamt that I was on the start line in like smart dress shoes that you wear to work or to church. I looked down, that's where I was. The town hall in Maritzburg, and I was in my dress shoes. But Fahima wants to know, please advise on how to manage the mental anxiety one feels as a novice. Is there anything you can take? She mentioned Carmets. Is something like that advisable?
Yeah, look, I definitely wouldn't be comfortable recommending medications to people, even calming stuff. I think that's really the realm of chatting to a doctor. Look, you are going to be nervous and you're going to struggle to sleep the night before, but the rest of the week should be quite good. So, I mean, really what you want to try and do is just sleep quite well the last 4 or 5 nights going into Comrades, and then knowing that the very last night you're not going to sleep very well. You are going to be really nervous, especially if you're a novice. So a nice thing to do is hopefully you've trained with people, or you at least are a member of a club where there are quite a few people that are running. So a nice thing to do is to meet those people somewhere and walk to the start together. And just being in and around other people will help you to be a little bit calm. Very important, and I will cover this in great detail in our second last webinar, and that is to minimize all the other types of stress. So make lists now for yourself, so that when you pack, you don't forget things, and when you get to Durban, you get stressed out because you've forgotten anything at home. The morning of the race, just get up really early, get to the start really early, get into your seating pen really early, because all of those things will minimize the stress, and then they don't add to the stress. Like when you're rushing and you're stuck in traffic and you're late and you only just make it into your seating pen, that's the kind of stress you don't need when you're already nervous.
Absolutely. All right. Lindsey, you spoke about the next one. I think it's just about time to wrap things up. The next one happening on the 13th of May. That's going to be our second last one. And then we'll do one 2 weeks out from race day as well. And the one 2 weeks out from race day, we'll be talking about exactly how you can save yourself 20 minutes on race day. So working through some of the time wasters. But in the next one, Lindsey, you mentioned about making lists and being prepared. What else are we going to be covering in the next online seminar?
Yeah, so the next one is really going to be all about the taper, how to do it, why is it important, and really just getting us mentally ready for the race, and then we'll leave the actual race, which we'll do for our very last webinar.
Absolutely, and that one is always a favourite. Lindsey, it's been awesome once again. Apologies if you joined us and there were technical issues at the start due to a mic issue on my computer. Obviously, it had been in for repairs and it was working fine when we tested, but not when we went live, unfortunately. So all good things work out in the end, and it seems like we did have a great session. Thank you so much for joining us. If you did get anything out of this, please share it with your running mates, and let's hope that they can get something out of it as well. And a massive thank you to our sponsor once again tonight, to Bonitas, who make this possible. If it wasn't for them, this thing wouldn't happen. So Bonitas, thank you so much for putting this whole thing together for us this evening. It is massively appreciated. And also, don't forget all those training programs and one-on-one coaching. You can get to coachparry.com for all of that info, or you can also get to the Comrades website to get more info on that as well. So until next time, from myself, Brad Brown, it's cheers. And Lindsey, parting shot from you.
Yeah, as I just want to take us right to the beginning of the webinar and to say that this is the toughest part of the training. Some fatigue is normal. So, get out there, log your kilometers, but just be aware of pushing yourself too hard, and remember that 65% of the people who don't finish start with an injury. So we want to make sure that we line up without an injury. So keep it up. 4 hard weeks ahead of you, and I hope to see all of you again in 4 weeks' time.
Yeah, let's talk about seeing Lindsey